What's up, y'all, and welcome back to the Morning Vibe. Happy Friday morning to you if you're listening to this on the day that it comes out, if you're watching on the YouTube channel. We greatly appreciate you guys being here. Let's go ahead and get that intro music hit so we can get rolling in to this Friday episode of the Morning Vibe. I hope y'all have had a fantastic week. It's been crazy for us. I'm not going to lie to y'all. We're going to get into that a little bit here in just a second, but it has been a bit of a roller coaster ride the last few days. First off, I want to apologize for not uploading regularly the last 2 weeks. We were doing really good last week, and then we just got crazy busy. And then I guess 3 or 4 days ago, my grandmother ended up getting rushed to the hospital up in Kentucky, so I took mom up there. We got up there about 8:15. I think it was on Tuesday night, maybe. I think it was Tuesday night. Got up there about 8:15. I got back up at 5 o'clock on Wednesday morning, drove back to Pensacola, Florida. Had a fishing trip scheduled yesterday with a charter captain here locally. That video will be out Monday on the main channel. So it's been crazy. My granny is doing much better, but you guys make sure you keep her in your prayers. She is still in the hospital. She was suffering basically from congenital heart failure. So make sure everybody sends some prayers up for her. We greatly appreciate that. But we're going to get back in the swing of things here. We're coming into the time of year that I really like. So daylight savings time starts on Sunday at 3 a.m. or something crazy. This weekend is the most important part of that. It'll be getting dark a little bit later, thank goodness. And I know it works out. Like, they're trying to pass a bill right now where they're gonna get rid of the clocks changing. And man, I hope they do that, because it's just like, you're basically, like I heard somebody put it one time, you're cutting the bottom off of a blanket to sew it to the top. The time changes went for farming back in the days. That's why they did that. It was because of crops and stuff like that with farmers. So hopefully they'll get that fixed to where we just stay on daylight savings time all the time. And I understand, through the winter months, it gets dark earlier no matter what, but the time change, man, it kind of puts me in a funk a lot of the time. So, but not a lot really crazy happened this week in the news world, I don't believe. The one thing that has happened in the last week, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about, is I feel like we had a major change in country music a week ago today on Friday when Morgan Wallen dropped his new album. Now, hear me out, because I want to talk about this, because I know there are a lot of people, it's like a straight divide line in the country music world. I grew up a country music fan, like a true country music fan. Like, I grew up on Conway Twitty and Johnny Cash, and then Reba McEntire, Garth Brooks, and Alan Jackson. 90s country is king to me. And before, I've seen Conway Twitty countless times in concert. There's not a lot of people my age that can say that, but I was blessed. My dad was a huge Conway Twitty fan. So anytime he came anywhere close to Louisville or where we lived in Kentucky, we were going to see him. I mean, back then, tickets were $10, $12 a piece or something, nothing crazy like what they're doing today. And obviously country music has changed a lot since then. And I want to kind of dive into that a little bit, because I feel like we're in a swing in country music right now, and I feel like we're in that swing because of Morgan Wallen. And hear me out, because I know there's already people beating on their keyboards I can't stand this pop country crap, and I'm with you. Most of the time, I don't like it. Now, I am a Morgan Wallen fan. I will tell you, I was before this album came out. He had some songs I didn't like, but everybody has songs, that they don't like. I just skip past them, go on to the ones I do. It was never, anything against him. I'm not a big fan of pop country. Sarah loves Walker Hayes. I'll say two things about Walker Hayes. First and foremost, one of the most amazing songwriters ever. If you listen to the lyrics of this man's songs, he's one of the greatest songwriting storytellers ever, in my opinion. That's the truth. I'm not a big fan of most of his music simply because it's just not my style. Nothing against Walker Hayes or anything like that. I think he's a great dude. I love his story. And he's got a couple of songs that I like, but just not my type of music. Same thing with Sam Hunt. Not a big Sam Hunt fan. Again, nothing wrong with it, just not really my cup of tea. That's kind of where country has shifted the last, I don't know, probably 7, 8, 9, 10 years even, maybe. There's still some true country artists out there. I do feel like, well, I'll get into that in a minute. Let's go back to the Morgan Wallen album. That's what I want to talk about first. I think it's awesome. I'm just going to drop the hammer right there. I think Morgan Wallen's new album is a game changer in the country music industry, and here's why. There has not been an artist who had control of the music industry like Morgan Wallen has since Garth Brooks back in the 90s. Now, if you guys are my age or maybe a little younger than me, definitely older than me, you're going to know Garth Brooks dominated the country music scene back in the 90s. He is the one that, I don't want to say he changed country music, he changed country music performances. Now, that's a fact. There were very few entertainers in country music. There were a lot of great singers. I brought up Conway Twitty. Conway Twitty was a great singer, but he was not an entertainer. Like when you went and watched Conway Twitty in concert, he was going to walk out on stage. He was either going to stand there in front of the microphone or he was going to sit on a stool just like the one I'm sitting on, and he was just going to sing to you. Johnny Cash, same way. Like those guys were great singers. They were not entertainers. Reba McEntire really started knocking on the door that Garth Brooks kicked in. If you've never seen Reba McEntire in concert, she was amazing. I haven't seen her recently. It's been years, but man, she put on a great show. Like she was doing the outfit changes and it was a performance. It wasn't just her getting up there singing. And then when Garth Brooks came along and he really took off, like he kicked that door down. Like he rewrote the rules of country music performances. At that point, he was winning Entertainer of the Year at every award show, and that was back when award shows actually meant something. They're not like there. Back then, I think all you had was the CMAs and the ACMs. That was it. That was when, awards actually meant something back then. And he was groundbreaking for country music performances and country music as a whole. And then, of course, 90s country is just like, in my opinion, the best genre time frame of music ever. And I think it was a victim of its own success, if I'm being honest with you, because I feel like because country music was literally ruling the world in the 90s and then even the early 2000s. And that's really when you saw a lot of people that probably should have been pop stars coming to country music instead, because that's where the money was at. They were chasing the dollars because, like at one point it was boy bands. It didn't matter what kind of like music you created. It didn't matter whether you were a rocker or whatever. They're like, oh, we're going to put you in a group with 4 other dudes, or I say boy band era, but I mean, there was female groups out there as well. You had SWV, you had Destiny's Child. There was a lot of women groups too. But like the NSYNCs, the Backstreet Boys, those kind of things, they were getting pushed for a while, but everything kept coming back to country music, and country music became a victim of its own success. 90s country and early 2000s country was so popular and so in demand that all the pop stars that probably should have been pop stars when they were coming up and through the ranks ended up singing country music, and then they put their own feel on it. And that's how you kind of ended up with where we're at today with like the poppy country. Again, I'm not bashing pop country. If that's your thing, hey, Sarah loves it. Like the PYT, it is 100% her favorite kind of music, hands, not even a question. So I do listen to quite a lot of it just because it's what she really enjoys. And I mean, I'm not one of these country peers like, I'll never listen to Sam Hunt or I'll never listen to Morgan. I'm not that. Like if it comes on, if it's a song I like, I'm not too stubborn in my ways, but like, hey, that's a good song. So why am I telling you all this? It was going to come back to Morgan Wallen's new album. And I think for the first time since Garth Brooks, I think we have a singer who is going to be able to rewrite the country rule book. I think you're going to see this album 100% make country music swing back to more close to 90s country. I truly believe that. And here's why. For the first time ever, so these guys are completely controlled by their record labels. If they are signed with a record label, they're controlled by that record label. They can get on television, they can say whatever they want to say, but their record label tells them what songs they're going to put on the album. They're going to tell them what songs they're not going to put them on the album. That's just the way it is. And that's the music industry as a whole. So most of the time, that's what it is. There's been very few artists who have been able to break out of what the record label wants them to do. And right now, what the record label is trying to push all these artists to do is that poppy country, because that's what sells, or that's what has sold recently. That's what they want them to do. Luke Bryan is a prime example. Like, I love Luke Bryan. His first couple albums were great. Then he gets into this weird place where you can tell that his record label is forcing songs down his throat. They want to come out with pop country that sounds like you're a country boy singing it. Now, I feel like Luke Bryan is one of the, I don't want to say few, because I'm sure there's a lot, but there's a few country artists that, like, when I look at them, I'm like, that dude's from the country. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's there's some of them you can look at and you're like, that dude's never seen a tractor in his whole life. And some of them you just can't. And I really feel like Luke Bryan is from the country. Same thing with Morgan Wallen. I feel like Morgan Wallen is a country boy through and through. I truly do. And then you got other people who are singing about being a country boy who truly aren't. But what Morgan Wallen has done is he has become so popular and so big that he's become bigger than the record label's rules. He has gotten to a point now where he can put out whatever he wants, and there is nothing that the record label can do about it. I would take this back to, if you don't know the story or you've never watched I can't even remember the name of the movie, but Joaquin Phoenix played Johnny Cash, and they did a great job of telling Johnny Cash's story in that movie. And if you've never watched it, I highly recommend it. It's an excellent movie. Walk the Line. That was the name of it. It was called Walk the Line. Joaquin Phoenix played Johnny Cash. Reese Witherspoon played Jude Carter Cash. Both of them did an amazing job. But Johnny Cash they were pushing him to be something that he wasn't at his record label. And he felt that. Like, he saw that. Of course, he was one of the biggest names in country music at that time. He was running around with Elvis and all those guys. And I think what the record label was seeing, it was almost like the reverse of what we're seeing today. They were seeing these rock and roll guys take off. Elvis, I'm trying to think of James Dean. Like, all these guys were like really, really starting to like gain some traction and taking off. And they're like, hey, this is what we want Johnny Cash to become. And he was just like, no. So he finally, like, that's when kind of when he went into like that wearing all black. And he told them when he recorded the album live at the prison, he basically told them, he's like, I'm going to record an album here. You can either be a part of it or you don't have to be, but that's what I'm going to do. It's your choice. I can either leave the record label. I'm sure contracts were way different back then, or you can come with me and we can make a killer album. Well, they did. And obviously Johnny Cash became the Man in Black. That was kind of the turning point in his career. And, it was huge for him. He broke the country music rules back then. And I think that's what you're seeing with Morgan Wallen right now. Like I said, I did have to drive up to Kentucky to take Mom up there. Morgan Wallen's new album has 35 songs on it, y'all. Crazy for a single album to come out. I think if I heard the story right, and I could be wrong about this, he wrote a lot of these songs himself, and he basically worked on this album during COVID, and he just ended up with so many songs that he liked. And I don't know whether they were coming from outside sources or all of them are wrote from him. I'm not 100% sure on that. But he came up with a solid album. And when you listen to this and you actually get past this mantra that you're going to have of, well, country's not country anymore. When you listen to this album, it's a country album. Now, there's a couple songs on there that still have kind of that poppy feel. But what you don't get with that is all like the beatboxing backgrounds. Like, I think that's really what drives some people, especially like your pure country fans, away from songs. It can be a great song, but if they don't hear some drums and some guitar and maybe some bass or something like that, it's not country to them. Well, when you go through and you listen to this Morgan Wallen album, almost every one of these backing tracks are live instrumentals, not synthesizers. And that's what it is. There, a lot of the times in country music now, you're listening to a synthesizer as the backdrop. That's what it is. And I think that's what's driving people away. Well, when you listen to this Morgan Wallen album, if you haven't listened to it yet, I highly recommend listening to it. Listen to it with an open mind, because I think you're going to be shocked, because everything is actual instrumentals that's being played. I'm not 100% sure, but there's a couple songs in there that I would almost bet money that there was some steel guitar going on. Now, if you're much younger than me, you probably don't even know what a steel guitar is. But I'm telling you right now, I'm almost 99.9% positive listening to these songs that I heard some steel guitar going on. Now, you don't get any more country than when a steel guitar starts getting played. I'm telling you all that right now. So if you haven't listened to the album, listen to it. Even if you've like wrote Morgan Wallen off and you think he's a pop country artist, I highly recommend you listen to this album, because I really think you're going to be pleasantly surprised by what you're hearing. I've got a couple favorite songs on it. He wrote a song on there. It's called Keith Whitley. Amazing song. You can tell, especially by this album, that he apparently as he was coming up, he drew a lot of inspiration from Keith Whitley, because Keith Whitley's mentioned in this album several times on different songs. And he has a song on there called Keith Whitley. Of course, Last Night's on there. That's one of the most popular songs. If you're on TikTok or any of the shorts or reels or anything like that, you've heard this Last Night song. It's crazy popular on social media right now. But my favorite song on the whole album, hands down, is the very last song on the album, and it's called Dying Man. And man, that song hits home. Like it just, you got to listen to it. Every song on there is very, very well written. It's very, very well put. There's a song on there called 98 Braves. He literally talks about, and it's funny because so many country songs sound exactly like another story that's already been told, and somebody's just putting a different key behind it and a little bit different words, and they're doing it. I've never heard really anybody take a love story and compare it to a song like he did in the song 98 Braves. And to me, I think that's brilliant as a songwriter. And he's basically saying, if you remember the 98 Braves, from opening day, they were supposed to win the World Series. They were loaded. There was not supposed to be another team in the world that could beat them. And then they didn't make it to the World Series. They ended up getting ousted by the San Diego Padres in the NL Championship game. And he's relating that to, he grew up in a small town. He was with this girl. Everybody knew they were going to make it. Like, they were the couple. They were going to grow up. They were going to settle down. They were going to have kids in this town. And they didn't make it. They didn't make it to where they were supposed to be. And he compares that to a sports team. And it's just the way he does it. It really is. It's a brilliant song. So I highly recommend going and checking it out. I wanted to talk about, I don't know why I wanted to talk about that this morning. I know it's kind of out of the norm, but I mean, I've told you guys, we will talk about anything on this. I will tell you guys, Monday's episode is going to be awesome because we're going to be reading mean comments that we get strictly for us, towards me, the PYT, all that kind of stuff. We're going to read the ones from Facebook, from YouTube, from the main channel, because obviously I don't get a lot of hate comments on here. I don't get very many views on these videos at this point. So, the hate comments will come, but they're just not there yet. So we'll get to them, I promise you. But guys, I truly hope you all have had a fantastic week. Thank you so much for being here with us on the Morning Vibe. We truly appreciate you guys. We'll get back to a little bit more of a normal upload schedule next week. I hope each and every one of you have a great weekend. God bless y'all. Make sure you find a way to make somebody smile today. We'll see you on the next one.